Very good, folks. Into virtual meeting mode. I'm just admitting people into the meeting, and hopefully you can pick up that you're in the right meeting because there's two. There's a virtual V5 and a virtual V6. If you wouldn't mind opening your cameras, and then we can also just see each other as we can interact more roundtable than a podium type discussion. And on virtual 5, virtual room 6 rather, we've got Belia as a Bella, and then on 6 we've got Moses that are going to be running the discussion. Hopefully those hosts are going to find their way here. But difficult scrambling and trying to host all of these, but we're getting people on board. Folks, wouldn't mind opening your cameras if possible, just so we can see each other and be humans in this virtual space that we're living in. Thank you very much for joining us, and thanks for being involved in the process. I see Peter has got a wonderful background there. That's great. Thank you very much. Please, let's chat a bit because you've been very quiet in the questions in the background. So I'm just giving you an opportunity just to chat and engage a little bit in that side from there. I will be moving in and out a little bit, and I will be mainly leaving it up to the leader of the session moderators to handle the discussion as we go through. I'm not sure if people have got presentations that they wish to present in the process, but maybe I can make a suggestion. If you have got long, lengthy presentations, maybe let's keep them short, or let's paraphrase them, or maybe just send them through to colleagues so that they can share their presentation after the discussion. Let's try and be a little bit more chatty than just being led by presentations. If there are any questions that you are nervous about asking, please use the chat box. And we'll be able to pick up some details there. You will also be able to chat with each other. Very open process there. You can just go along and chat into the processes there. So I'm going to hand over to Bella on the one side, and there we go. Thank you very much. I'll ask you to unmute, and then I'm going to hand over on the other side as well. So please forgive me if I drop in and out of the sessions, but I'm just going to be coordinating them from the outside.
Okay, hi everyone. I hope you can all hear me clearly. Apologies that you will be seeing my face for the majority of the session. This is because we can't display the rest of the audience. I don't think it will be too much of an issue in any case because we are virtual in that case. Please just give us a few minutes for people to enter the room. Some people are moving from the auditorium to the breakout sessions. As soon as we're ready, we'll get started with the first presentation from Dr. Sifiso. Dr. Sifiso, if you could please get ready. I do have 4 presentations with me. If you prefer to share screen and present from your personal laptop, that's also fine, and that might be better for control. But if you are insistent that you would rather have me present it, that's also okay. Please just let me know before you start your presentation. So happy to be here, and thank you, everyone. Okay, for people who just entered the room, welcome and thank you for joining us. We're just waiting for a few people to enter the room and then we'll get started. On the screen is the list of our presenters, as well as their paper names and what their papers are titled. We'll get started as soon as possible. Please bear with us. Okay. Hi, everyone. Apologies about that. We just had a bit of a delay because of rooms where we're at. I hope you can all hear me. Hope you can all see me. Yes?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. Welcome to our session. I'm very much looking forward to the presentations from all presenters today. We are having a virtual session, so the majority of the presentation will be happening online. Presenters, before you start, please let me know if you prefer to have your session or presentation rather, sorry, controlled and shared via your personal space where you are, or if you prefer for me to project your presentation. It's obviously easier if you present it yourself because you can control how you move. Just a reminder that you each have 20 minutes to speak. I will put up signals closer to the time when you are running out of time to let you know and indicate that you have to stop or conclude your presentation. I'll do so on the chat, so please open your chats and ensure that you're able to read your chats to make sure that we're all on the same page and you can create your timing. Okay, without further ado, Dr. Sviso, are you ready?
Good afternoon, Bella. I am
Afternoon.
ready. Yes, I wish to present and control on my side, but I see the functionality here is not allowing me. It says the host has disabled participant
Oh,
screen sharing.
okay.
I think there's something in my...
I know what you mean. All
Yeah.
right, all right. Let me just try to solve that so it's easier for all of us. If not, I will just, Dr. Sviso, just to check that you send me your presentation.
I have just shared it with you on the
On the
chat,
chat, I can see
on
it
the
now.
Zoom, yeah.
Okay. I'll just let you know. Please give me a minute if I will project for you, or if we can give you projecting rights.
I think now it's allowing me.
Great, that's perfect. Cool. Whenever you're ready, you can start.
All right. Just sharing my desktop. Please confirm.
Yes, we
If
can see it. Would you like to just close your Zoom window to open your full presentation? Thank you. That's perfect. When you're ready, you can start.
Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm from the Durban University of Technology. My name is Sifiso Mieni. I am located in the Department of Human Resources Management within the Durban University of Technology. The presentation today I'm going to be presenting to you all. It's titled A Human Capital Approach to the Employability of Actors for an Inclusive Growth and Sustainability, or rather for a sustainable development in Africa. I thank you for this opportunity. So this particular presentation is really premised around the issues of unemployment, and I'm using a human resources approach to ensure that the actors that I've identified, which were my participants, are actually benefiting from employability that they can be able to achieve in this particular sector of the film and television sector. So there has been a study that has been conducted by Dunga in 2024, which indicates that there's about 51.4% of households in South Africa that remain to be unemployed. So we have noted that unemployment rate is negatively affecting the economic growth, meaning that the growth in the economy is rather not yielding a positive growth in employment. That is also backed up by a finding by Blom in 2023. So there is the South African poverty rate, which is currently sitting at 49%, as well as an indication or a finding of 64.2% of Black South Africans that are living in poverty. This is also backed up by the Q2 findings of 2024 by the Stats South Africa that indicates that South Africa is really having a 33.5% unemployment rate. So all of these statistics point to the dire state of unemployment that we are facing in South Africa as a country. So I'm presenting rather a human capital approach to this issue of employability and it having to affect employability, or the issue of unemployment and it affecting employability. So what is human capital? Human capital is about the general health. It's about the skills, the knowledge and abilities of the general population and the workforce. It focuses on being the driver of economic growth, meaning once we have a good human capital in the country, it can contribute to the economic growth. It drives the economic growth and it also drives productivity. So if companies invest in human capital through formal education, it has been noted by Langelet in 2002 that this yields to future returns, and it can have both the microeconomic as well as macroeconomic consequences. So that is a given. It's been found by these various researchers. But let's look at the context that this study is premised upon: the film and television industry of South Africa. Firstly, in India, it is taking the lead. In India, this particular sector is taking a lead in developing countries, and it is experiencing a growth of 8.5%. That is a developing country like India. In Nigeria, also coming back home in Africa, Nigeria is leading in Africa as far as this film and television industry is concerned, according to a PricewaterhouseCoopers study in 2020. But in-house then in South Africa, the industry is facing a number of skills development challenges. These include training and development, the lack of creative and skills gap, which is dominated also by white individuals. That's according to the South African country report. So what is the problem that we are really studying this particular phenomenon? The human capital approach is contributing or contributes to the employability of individuals, but it is sidelined in the film and television industry of South Africa. So this deprives the economy of the opportunity for it to grow, as well as for the sustainability or for sustainable development to take place in Africa in general. So that's the biggest problem that the study is trying to resolve. So the study aims to measure the various human capital practices that are associated with the employability of actors for an inclusive economic growth and sustainable development in Africa. So what are the various objectives that the study seeks to look into? There's a number of them. One is to measure the effect of retention. So the retention is then provided as a sub-construct. They measure the effect of retention that it has on employability of actors in the film and television sector. Number two, to identify the training and development initiatives that influence employability of actors. Number three, to ascertain the various reward schemes utilized in the sector. Number four, to identify performance management imperatives within the industry. And lastly, to understand the recruitment and selection practices that are influencing employability. All right, so based on these 5 objectives, we then utilize the methodology of that is underpinned by constructivism, a research paradigm, underpinned by a particular theory called the Cogniz Expanded Talent Development Theory. So this theory is looking into issues of talent development and how can a talent be developed. And in the context of this study, this theory is used then to project how best can human capital practices, or this human capital approach, be utilized for it to influence employability of actors for the sake of economic growth as well as sustainable development. So the research design that was deployed in the study was a quantitative one, a semi-structured questionnaire with a Cronbach alpha reliability of 0.869 was utilized. The population of the study was identified as the various actors in the film and television sector. Now, this was open-ended. There's a number of them coming from a number of sub-sectors within the broader film and television sector, but this I will be unpacking later on. So the sample that was chosen was a random sampling of a sample size of 94 respondents, and ethical considerations such as individual consent, anonymity was all considered as part of the methodology of this particular study. Here's a snapshot of the profile of the participants in the study. Gender, as far as gender is concerned, 55% were females, 45% males. Age distribution, 2/3 of the participants, about 61% of them are below the age of 30 years and only 2 above 50 years. The educational profile was more than a third had a certificate, 36% rather, which was followed by 20% with a diploma. Looking at the various subsectors and the distribution, 73% were in the theater or stage subsector. So this is where I said I will be coming back to. So when you're looking at the broader film and television sector, majority of them were coming from this background. They were involved with the theater and stage. 52% were in the television space and 43% also in the film sector. Right. So the number of years experience were about 72% of them contributing or within this age bracket of 3 to 5 years in the organization, 24% of them working more than 10 years, etc. Now, this is just the methodology and the profile of the participants, but let's look at the interesting findings that one had actually found out pertaining to the various objectives that the study sought to find. The distribution of the overall scores highlighted a 66% of participants responding positively to the human capital theme, with the mean scores recorded at 35.66. So this particular theme was a theme amongst other themes within the major study of the broader project of my doctoral studies. So this is just a snapshot or a theme or an objective of the major study. So, but when we're looking at the overall theme of human capital, it was really having a positive distribution. So the younger participants scored higher means compared to the older generation. That was another finding from the statistics that we ran. All right, so the strength of the relationship between human resources management as well as employability was a medium positive relation or correlation. So there was some correlation to this effect. Now let's look at each of the objectives to see whether is there any finding that we are seeing with the human capital and it contributing to the employability of these participants. All right, so objective 1, just to remind you, was to measure the effect, retention. The whole sub-theme there is around retention, whether it has any effect on employability of actors. So a number of actors strongly disagreed that the profession provided benefits such as medical aid, life policies, and retirement provisions, which are usually used as a form of retaining employees in organizations. But in this particular sector, the participants indicated that there were no provisions of this nature, which is making the retention to be wanting in this instance. They strongly agreed on the provision of their own securities, meaning they provided for themselves. The company did not provide and did not have any retention schemes of this nature. They were neutral on the provision of safe working conditions or a safe working environment, as we know that in the traditional space, an employer would be the one who provides for this safe working environment. But in this particular sector, it's found that, you know, employees are working, or rather they are neutral as far as whether they are working in a safe working environment, which also raises an alarm as far as that is concerned, which is traditionally acceptable that it needs to be provided by an employer. Number 2, This objective focused on identifying training and development initiatives, influencing employability of an actor. The participants were neutral on whether their education, their skills and development and training were being in line with their remuneration. So the amount that these participants or the training and development that was associated with their background was not somehow associated with their remuneration. So no matter how educated you would be, no matter how skilled you would be, no matter how developed you'd be in this particular sector, there was no direct a relationship as far as that is concerned, which can be discouraging when we are discussing this in much more greater detail. Objective number 3 was to ascertain the various rewards management schemes or systems that were utilized in the sector. Still, the employees were found to be neutral on whether the more they perform, the more they are rewarded. So this was also something that was flagged in the research, something that this particular sector needs to look into, because performance is greatly in the conventional employment setting known to be associated with performance. The more performance you would be displaying, the more also rewards that employees would be getting, which would also be motivating if we are advancing the discussion. Objective number 4 was to identify performance management imperatives within the industry. Strongly agreed for what is expected of them regarding their performance. They know what is expected, so that's a positive. They also agreed that their past performance being the basis upon which new roles are being assigned. So performance management is performed or done correctly in this particular industry. When the actors are performing, they are also getting more opportunities elsewhere in other productions or in future employment, so to say. So there was a clear direction or relationship with how performance management is connected to their employability in this instance, which was a positive. Objective number 5, ladies and gentlemen, to understand the recruitment and selection practices influencing employability. Now, using a 5-point scale, the participants were neutral on whether the process used to select the right actor for the right role is competent, which is also something, this neutrality is something that is raising a red flag, because the attitude that, or the perception that employees are having as far as the correctness of the recruitment process, meaning that they are believing on the recruitment process being done efficiently, on employing the right person for the right role, that perception is also contributing to their well-being in the organization. But if it remains neutral like this, it becomes a red flag for the study. Now, further, they agree on being aware of the criteria used to qualify for a particular role, as well as being aware of the acting positions in the industry, which was a positive. Now, what implications does this have, and what recommendations can be put forward, especially with these findings that remain neutral, or rather has a negative connotation on the findings? All right, the industry needs to invest in retention provisions such as benefits for actors, including medical aid, retirement funding, as well as unemployment insurance benefits. And this is really practical, ladies and gentlemen, because a lot of participants or actors in this particular industry would be crying foul, especially when they're in need of medical provisions, especially when they're in need of retirement funding post their working age. So it becomes something really that the industry has to look into. In fact, the broader study recommends a framework on how this gap can be breached, and it's also recommended in the main paper. All right, so each of the employing companies also needs to look at providing safety for their employees in the workspace, as this is traditionally known as the duty of the employer or the employing company to do as such, which is currently not in line with the number of labor prescripts as well, according to the South African Labor laws. So there is more concerted effort which is required towards the upskilling of actors, which includes education, training for improved performance, which inversely improves the employability of actors. So the more trained, the more educated the employers would be, it would also increase their performance. We know that in the broader aim of the study, this increased performance would also be increasing the economic growth as well as the sustainable development of Africa in totality. So the linking of rewards to performance would also assist with driving this increased performance, ladies and gentlemen. So in conclusion, economic growth as well as sustainable development cannot happen if the film and television sector is sidelined in contributing to the mainstream economy, just like the mainstream industries, which would include manufacturing, including mining, etc. Without really the film and television film and television industry contributing, this economic growth and sustainable development would not really be realized, especially the inclusive sustainable development. It will not be realized. So South Africa cannot make a wide-scale contribution to this bigger Africa agenda without being without rather it being a global partner. It cannot do that. So the various human capital contributions to this sector shall assist with achieving of this economic growth and inclusive sustainable development. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Doc. Very, very interesting presentation. I can relate to a lot of the examples and case studies you're discussing right there. I'm also from South Africa, and I know a lot of young people in the industry, specifically in the entertainment industry. So thank you very much for a very, very interesting presentation. I'm going to ask that the virtual members who would like to ask questions, please note down your questions. I would like to take questions at the end to give everyone the opportunity to present in time. So thank you very much. Doc, please look out for questions at the end of the session. Please do not leave as yet. Thank you. All right, we are now moving on to the second presentation. The presentation is on women empowerment initiatives and the sustainable poverty evaluation among women in internally displaced camps. The presenters are Prof. Robert. Are you in the room? Sorry, I just want to check the participants to make sure that the participants is in the room. Okay. Well, I can't see the participants, so I'm just going to move on. Apologies for that. Okay, we are now moving on to Emmanuel's presentation on internet frustration and business practices. Emmanuel, are you in the room?
I'm here. I'm trying to share my slides.
All right. You should be allowed, if you could please assist with giving permission for that individual to share slides, and when you're ready, we can set it up. Okay, you should be able to share, Emmanuel. Please note that the share button, is at the bottom of the screen. Sandila, I have seen your message. We will move on to you as soon as we're done with this presentation. Emmanuel, please confirm you can share.
And Manuel, if I can just come in, at the bottom in the middle of the screen, there's a share button.
Yes, I've gotten it.
You got it
Yes,
there.
please, could you share? Emmanuel, is everything okay?
It's okay. Got
Are
it.
you able to share?
There we go. There's something happening there. That's great.
Okay. All right. When you're ready, you have 20 minutes.
Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. We can see your presentation. You can open it up or present the way in which it is right now. It's up to you. Perfect. When you're ready.
Yeah, okay,
We can also see you in the.
that's fine. Good afternoon, distinguished members of academia. My name is Emmanuel Oparinyante, and I'll be doing this presentation with Selom Ochrimensa and Betty Inyamesem Owusu. Thank you for joining us today, and we also appreciate this opportunity to share our research with you. Today, we would explore the interaction of internet infrastructure development and ethical considerations in Africa, focusing on how to bridge the digital divide and foster sustainable growth. The digital revolution has transformed societies, but the benefits have not been fairly and evenly distributed. Africa is particularly faced with significant challenges in accessing reliable internet infrastructure. In the global north, robust digital infrastructure supports high-speed internet and data centers, whilst African countries often rely on expensive international bandwidth, creating a systemic disadvantage. Let me allude to HITS making recommendations for policy development. Balance hinders Africa's ability to achieve its unique development goals, reinforcing dependence on external tech infrastructure. In this paper, we draw your attention to the critical issue of internet infrastructure disparity between the global north and the global south, with particular focus on its impact on Africa's sustainable growth. Africa faces significant challenges in bridging this digital divide, and it's also impacting the ability to achieve the AU's Agenda 2063. There is also this issue of unequal access to robust and reliable internet infrastructure. This directly hinders economic growth, social development, and innovation, among others. There is also the complex interplay, which this presentation explores. The complex interplay of technology, economic, and socio-political factors that contribute directly to this disparity. We looked at three objectives. One was analyzing existing internet governance frameworks in selected African countries, assessing their effectiveness in promoting data sovereignty and mitigating digital colonialism. Objective 2, examine public-private partnerships for internet infrastructure development in Africa, focusing on equitable access and affordability. Objective 3 was identify and evaluate successful models of digital education and training programs to support workforce development. Our approach to this paper is a mixed methods approach combining qualitative and quantitative analysis. And we also used data collection, basically the review of academic journals from the World Bank, regional reports, national ICT policy documents. For the analysis techniques, we are using the thematic analysis for literature, statistical analysis for quantitative data, and comparative case studies and study methodology for in-country reports. Key data sources, as I mentioned, include academic journals that provides insights into the digital divide, governance and ethical implications. ICT infrastructure and statistics. We also have the regional report and the country reports. For the literature review, we looked at the themes around ethical imperative of bridging the digital divide in Africa, among other themes. For the ethical imperative, we looked at the difference in internet access across the global north and the south. The main argument is that Africa remains the most affected by the digital divide, influencing economic and social inequalities. Still on the literature review, we look at the term, the digital divide, which is commonly used, and it describes the gap that exists between those with easy access to digital technology and those without easy access. In our context, it represents the stark contrast in internet speed, the access, affordability, and digital literacy between the global north and the global south. We also looked at the consequences of this divide: reduced local innovation, slower economic development, and exacerbated social inequalities. Please note that this divide is both a technical and a socio-economic challenge, affecting not only internet access, but also the benefit people can derive from the access. We look at healthcare, we look at education and financial services. All of this increasingly becoming digital. Addressing the digital divide is crucial. The collaborative ventures should, the impact, still on the literature review, the impact of internet exchange points, reduce latency and reliance on international networks. The role of the private partnerships provide collaborative ventures between those who provide these resources to most African countries. And these collaborative ventures should not only provide infrastructure and services, but ensure that the benefits that are derived are of good quality and solve the situations confronting Africa. We have potential benefits, that is to foster for faster deployment, increase financial and technical resources out of these partnerships. And as mentioned earlier, ensuring these partnerships public welfare alongside profitability. Still on the literature review, we looked at ethical considerations in internet development. We looked at data sovereignty, digital colonialism into detail, and then the recommendations from this policies promoting local ownership and robust data protection. The literature also reviewed the successful models. The outcome of these models have underlying features: enhanced digital literacy and effective participation in the digital economy. These highlights of these are programs that blend public and private efforts, resulting in scalable models. And as mentioned earlier on, the outcomes, the digital literacy, enhanced digital literacy, and then participation in the digital economy. The expected findings from this research in analyzing and processing our data, we expect confirmation of data sovereignty, data colonialism, affordability, and then we also expect that with these findings, we would align them with Agenda 2063. We will look at the goals and priority areas of Agenda 2063. One, the aspiration one, a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. Then for the goals, we looked at two, that is goal 2 and 10. Goal 2 is well-educated citizens and skills revolution underpinned by science, technology, and innovation. And also goal 10, world-class infrastructure crisscrossing Africa. For the priority areas, we looked at communications and infrastructure. These are crucial to the realization of Agenda 2063. In conclusion, our paper poses a comprehensive exploration of the ethical dimensions in internet infrastructure. The recommendations that will be finally made will be to prioritize policies that ensure data sovereignty, inclusive private partnerships, and robust digital training. For future research, what is coming out of our research is that there is a need to explore the ethical implications and emergency technologies, i.e. AI, blockchain in Africa's internet ecosystem, though the divide still exists. A call to action would be a collaborative approach among policymakers, private sector, and civil society for equitable and sustainable growth, and the achievement of the AU's Agenda 2063. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. That was perfectly on time, so thank you very much. Please stay on the session, and if anyone does have any questions on this presentation, please note them down and be ready to ask the presenters. Please note there are 3 presenters, so they can all answer the questions, not just Emmanuel. But thank you very much, Emmanuel. Very, very interesting paper. All right, we will now be moving on to the next presenter. Emmanuel, if you wouldn't mind to stop sharing. Can I just find out if Apiwe is in the room?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Bapiwe, I meant Apiwe. Okay, but Bapiwe, when you're ready, you are the next person to be called up, and your presentation is on employee resistance to leader political skills. When you're ready, please share your presentation and you can start. You have 20 minutes. Bapiwe, please confirm that you're able to share. Thank you. We can see your screen. Thank you. We can see your presentation. You can start when you're ready. It seems like you have a PDF version open. Are you looking to open it on presentation instead? Okay. When you're ready, you can start.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, my apologies. So my name is
Don't
Mkhabela
worry.
Taweti. I am a lecturer at the Durban University of Technology. So my paper is essentially about the relationship between leaders and employees when leaders are trying to influence employees in the workplace. And I'm particularly interested in whether the nationality identity between the leader and an employee plays a role in how a leader and an employee relate to each other, and what the response is likely to be from employees against that leader based on nationality. And I am looking at this in the context of higher education in South Africa. So what is the problem? So the problem is that we know how leaders go about influencing employees who are similar to them in terms of nationality. So for example, the leader and the employee are from the same country. But what we don't know enough about is how the relationship works between the leader and the employee if the leader has a different nationality identity from the employee. And the importance of this is really around transformation of organizations to become more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. Now, in South Africa, in particular, we've had challenges around xenophobia in workplaces, where which has caused tensions for leaders on how to better manage and influence and use certain tactics in the workplace, and how the identity of the leaders is also viewed by the employees, for example, around issues of ethics and so on. Now, I am looking at this issue particularly in universities because in South Africa, post-apartheid, the system that was used for segregating people based on their identity, meant that there were many people who were excluded from accessing workplaces. In particular, Black South Africans were excluded from accessing opportunities in university. So post-apartheid, there was a move to bring people who are from other countries into South Africa, particularly into universities, in terms of the management of the universities, in terms of knowledge production, and also in terms of teaching. And my interest is really to see how the presence of foreign nationals in these universities has played out in terms of how leaders influence employees and whether employees embrace these differences or whether there is some resistance to that. And also the perceptions about what ethical leadership is when it is also looked at from the lens of nationality and identity. The other concern around this is this issue of migration, people moving from different places to other places to access opportunities, and the changes that take place in those workplaces and what they mean for relations. So this was an important area to look at, because from the practice side, there are tensions that leaders and employees are dealing with, but also from the literature side, that we don't know enough about what happens when there are differences in nationality identity between leaders and employees. What we know in research is that people tend to gravitate towards people who are like them, in this case, nationality. So people will look for people who share the same nationality. But because of transformation, as required by legislation in South Africa, there are these tensions that were worth investigating as such. So the work of Ferguson Judge is one area of research around this, and the work that has been done by many other researchers, Ferris, Hawkwater, Summers, and many others, on investigating this issue of identity in the workplace. My interest being around the issue of nationality. So what is the question that I'm trying to understand? Is whether nationality as an identity difference plays a role in how leaders influence employees in the workplace, and when they are trying to be ethical in doing that. I'm aware that office politics is usually viewed in a negative way, that it's really about people exercising power in workplaces for their own interest. But what we know in literature is that office politics, through political skill and their tactics, can actually be used to drive a particular position, in this case, promoting ethical behavior, and then looking at that around whether nationality differences matter in that regard. I also want to state at this point that this is a developing paper, so it's really in its infancy in terms of conceptualization, and so any feedback is welcome. In terms of the theoretical lens that is used for conducting this study, I'm using political influence theory as proposed by Ferris and Judge, which is really around explaining that organizations are made up of irrational leaders rather than rational, that people pursue different interests in the workplace, and that there are always limited resources and opportunities for leaders and employees in the workplace. And because of those conditions, they create grounds for all sorts of tactics to be used, like manipulation and other forms of influence. So that is the lens that I'm using. The other lens is on social identity, which is essentially about how we identify ourselves and how we identify others. So how do we view the next person and the identity that we attach to them, And based on that, we make comparisons, the age of in-group and out-groups. In this case, around nationality. So what is one's nationality identity? What is the national identity of the next person, leaders or employees, and how that plays a role in office politics and the influence that takes place in the workplace. As I mentioned earlier, the literature explains that we know that people prefer to work with people who are like them, in this case, share the same nationality. But we don't know enough about what happens when the nationality is different between the leader and the employee. What we do know is that this causes tensions in the workplace, and that issues of xenophobia and making certain assumptions about people who are from certain nationalities further causes tensions in the workplace. And this is necessary, though, for transformation of the workplace. As I had mentioned earlier, in the higher education sector, South Africa faced a challenge of how to bring Black Africans into the university. And one way of doing that was to find Black Africans from elsewhere in the world to join universities here. So it's an interesting area to look at in theory and in practice. At this point, this is the model that is proposed. It's still in its draft, to really look at the relationship between ethical leadership and the exercise of political skill, particularly using manipulation, and whether employees are likely to resist or show resistance against a leader who is using influence based on national identity as a moderator. And in this respect, I'm using social identity as a lens for doing that. Right. So what is the main hypothesis that is proposed for this study? That ethical leadership will influence employee resistance. And the sub-hypothesis is really that employees are likely to show resistance if that leader is seen to be from a different nationality than the employee. In terms of data, so the study is proposing a cross-sectional study from a deductive approach, a positivist view of understanding the relationships between these constructs and the direction that they will take. And the survey is proposed for academic employees, that is, from junior lecturers up until full professors, and how they see their immediate managers, wherein the immediate managers are of a different nationality. And I chose KwaZulu-Natal province for this because there have been some tensions around xenophobia and questioning whether the appointment of people into positions who are from other countries is appropriate, or positions should be prioritized for South Africans, and the questions around xenophobia. South Africa is an interesting country to conduct this study because of the apartheid system that prevailed prior to '94 of segregating people based on how they look, but also that South Africa is now in a democratic system of promoting integration of different nationalities as such. So it is really a unique sample point to collect data in this context, in particular, higher education institutions. In terms of data analysis, the proposed analysis is the correlations, regression, and then testing for moderation of nationality identity using the Hayes plug system. Then to have control variables around, for example, how long people have worked for these universities, and also for things like class, would class positioning, socioeconomic issues be one of the controls perhaps one should look at, and the common method bias associated with this type of research design. What are the expected contributions for this study? Is really to understand social identity, category of nationality against the issue of ethical leader political skill. So does nationality difference play a role in how employees view whether a leader is ethical and whether they are playing office politics fairly, if you like? Now, practically, it's really to help leaders on how to better promote ethics in the workplace by paying attention to how they influence employees against the tensions that may be associated with resistance, against the backdrop of dealing with the tensions of transformation for diversity, inclusion, and equity in the workplace. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Very interesting. And I really do hope to see the rest of your paper. It's very interesting. Thank you very much for your presentation. Please note down any questions you may have, audience and members within the meeting. For Bapiwe, Bapiwe, please remain behind to maybe also answer those questions from the audience. All right, I would like to check if Dudu is in the room.
Yes, I am.
Yes, Dudu, you have a co-presenter. Are you co-presenting with someone or is it just you?
It's gonna be just me. I don't see Prof as part of the group.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. When you're ready, please share your presentation. You have 20 minutes. You can start when you're ready.
Kindly confirm if you can see the presentation.
Yes, we can, but there's like a, I don't know if everyone else can see sort of there's blocks on your screen.
And now?
Yeah, no, the presentation is there. There's just a gray block in the middle of your screen.
Oh,
If I
okay.
can
Please
just
confirm if you see
suggest
that.
just going out and come back in, because those are, when you come and share back in, there's two buttons on the right-hand side that you must tick so that it unticks the buttons. It's a idiosyncrasy of Zoom. So maybe if you go out of that share and then come back in, Dudu, it might be fine.
Oh, so I must just go out of the group and come back.
No. Just stop sharing and then share again.
Oh, okay.
And then just come back in.
Okay.
No, don't leave us. Please don't leave us. No.
Okay. So now I can go back in and
And
try
now
and
go
share.
share again, yeah.
Okay.
And when you are sharing, there's two buttons on the right-hand side that are normally used for video sharing. If you just unselect those,
Oh, okay.
there's two buttons on the right-hand side that say for video use and for sound, I think it is. But just make sure those are unticked, but they're not ticked.
There is optimize for video sharing and
Yeah.
share.
Yeah, those must be unticked.
Or they are unticked.
Okay, let's try again then. Let's go share back your presentation.
Okay.
It's still there. I think it might just be a residue of, have you got any chat boxes or any question boxes open in place there?
Let me see.
Zoom ones, Zoom like boxes.
No, there's nothing. There's nothing else on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest you carry on. Maybe go into presenter mode. Because that's right across the middle now. And that's now it's gone.
Okay.
You go into presenter mode. Yeah, there on the bottom. That's great. It's still at the top, but it's not as impacting as it was before. I would suggest go along in the value of time that we've got.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Super. Okay.
Thank you and good afternoon, members of the academia. My name is Dudu Ndlovu. The co-author is Prof. Anwana, but I'm not seeing her as part of the group, so I'll proceed in terms of the presentation. You will forgive me, I'll try to run quickly because my presentation seems to be the longest one that I've seen today. In terms of the study, in terms of the paper, I am looking at the ethics in governance. It's one of the subjects that we thoroughly discussed today in terms of the conference. So the study will then contribute to that as well. So it's ethics in governance and assessment of ethical factors driving standard procurement in selected KZN local municipalities. Just a background, the study is informed by the failed service delivery that has become an issue which needs to be addressed in terms of KZN. Also, the issue of poor audit outcomes, both regulatory audits and also performance audits that is informed also by service delivery and also compliance issues. So also the other factor is the increase in terms of the unauthorized, irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure as reported by Auditor General South Africa. So as a practitioner in the field, I really thought, let me go for it and try and understand what are the factors in terms of these issues that are being reported, also that we are seeing in terms of our communities. Just to summarize, as I've indicated, that my presentation is quite long. So in terms of the introduction, the South African public procurement process has undergone significant transformations in the past 2 decades due to procurement reforms and methodologies implemented during those years and still being implemented even now in terms of the current law that has been passed in July, which is the Public Procurement Act. These reforms aim to promote sound governance and create a preference system for socio-economic goals. However, the current state of procurement management is marked by misconduct, including unethical practices, which could lead to subpar government performance, particularly in local municipalities. Therefore, it is crucial to examine the ethical factors driving the standard procurement practices in South Africa. A mixed method research study assessed the ethical factors that driving and propelling the standard practice in terms of SEM in the selected municipalities in KZN province. From the findings, it will seem that the issues of ethics and accountability are considered pertinent in the SEM practices of selected KZN organizations. Recommendations in the study suggested, among other points, the increased rollout of training that focuses on sensitizing and conscientizing SEM practitioners on the centrality of upholding good ethics towards improving SEM and public procurement practices within the municipalities. In terms of literature, I will look in terms of status of municipalities and SEM practices in South Africa, and also to that generic review of SEM in South Africa municipal environment. In terms of the current status, municipalities in South Africa, more especially KZN, are classified into 10 districts and 32 local municipalities. The implementation of SEM practices in local government is mandated by South African Constitution. The responsibility of ensuring compliance these requirements lies with Auditor General, who reports on this matter as noted by as per the provisions outlined in the South African 1996 Constitution. Municipalities are classified into 3 district categories. So all in all, we have about 278 municipalities in South Africa. 226 of those are local municipalities as classified. 44 of those are district municipalities, and the remaining 8 are designated as metropolitan municipalities. The degree to which individuals, including employees, council members, and state officials get extraneous awards in violation of regulation determines their adherence to SEM. Contracts are deemed insufficient, but a process might serve as an evidence of irregularities and non-compliance with SEM regulations, which leads to unethical practices, including corruption and accountability. particularly in cases where awards are granted to individuals who are close, related, or affiliated with parties involved. Furthermore, in South Africa municipal context, SCM primarily encompasses fiscal management strategies that are implemented to govern the handling of funds during the acquisition of the products and services. Additionally, it ensures that service delivery is attuned to the demands of the community while preventing the prevalence of corruption from impending transactions and hindering the overall process. In the South African context, numerous municipalities have exhibited non-compliance with legislation in terms of supply chain management. Corruption has been prevalent, whereby a limited number of persons have derived financial gains while compromising the provision of essential services, as noted by Manyati. It has been observed that authorities disregard SCM regulations, resulting in preferential treatment for families in terms of job opportunities and tendering processes. In addition, it is imperative to ensure adherence to the external auditor who examines the reports provided by the mayor or notes that the audit process serves the purpose of mitigating corruption, nepotism among office bearers, such as political and accounting officers, to prevent any adverse impacts on the stakeholders, including providers and communities. In terms of public sector, SAM practices are very necessary, particularly in the context of South Africa. The adoption of the joint assessment study that was conducted by World Bank some time back, facilitated by National Treasury Office, took place in the year 2001 within government entities such as municipalities. A notable deficiency in both accountability and transparent procurement process has been registered. The municipal region has received substantial attention in terms of the implementation of deals such as excellent service speed, as well as value for money. However, there are apparent scarcity of literature that explores challenges in SAM municipal governance. The lack of appropriate organizational structures equipped with necessary abilities, expertise, and capabilities to effectively carry out SAM responsibilities have been identified as a significant factor contributing to the inadequate provision of services and cases of corruption within the municipalities. This was noted by Motuba. Still within the generic review of SCM in South Africa at the municipal environment. One of the things that is noted is the lack of adequate skills and knowledge that results in a lack of comprehension of policies. SCM can be complex, leading officials with appropriate skills to have difficulties in comprehending certain regulations and procedures. Consequently, local government have encountered challenges in establishing supplier relationship, a critical component within the realm of SCM. It is evident that in some of the studies, as highlighted, South African municipalities generally face issues with SCM practices and non-compliance with available regulatory stipulation on supply chain management or public procurement, bordering on unethical behaviors, which have consequently impacted negatively on the performance of local municipalities, leading to poor service delivery. This point remains crucial in the efforts of current research to assess the influence of ethical SCM practices in public procurement on performance of local municipalities in KZN. One of the theories that were then applied during the research is the performance management, which is then in the field of management studies and public administration. Performance management has emerged as an approach essential to local government legislation and is also central to new public management system utilized to reform local municipalities administration in South Africa. Performance management as an approach to public administration is aimed at realizing goals at the municipal level governance. The current study adopts performance management as a theoretical approach towards the aim of assessing the effect of ethical SCM practices on the overall performance of local municipalities in the chosen context of this study. The theory is chosen because it allows the evaluation of SEM practices and how their implementation in the selected municipalities assist or does not assist in realizing what needs to be achieved by the municipalities towards effective service delivery. In terms of policies and procedures that regulate organizations are part of legal framework, good governance depends on good and ethical SEM rules and regulations. South Africa's public sector SEM is governed by restructuring policies and reforms. Notably, the regulations of environment lowers political risk, discretion, and corruption. Hence, existing South Africa's local government administration laws will serve as a guide for the study's assessment. In this study, we then considered the MFMA, which is the Municipal Finance Management Act, the Constitution of South Africa, Chapter 7, and also in terms of the provision of Section 217, subsection 1 of the Constitution. The PPFA was also considered. Hence, the discussion in the study will be guided by these stipulations, and the effort will be understand how they then inform the maintenance of ethical SEM public procurement practices in the selected municipalities. In terms of the problem statement, as I have mentioned earlier, the identified inadequacies in service delivery across South Africa's local municipalities are a potential consequence of subpar government performance, non-compliance with legislation, and a series of unethical behaviors, especially at the local government level. Notably, at significant amounts of local municipalities in KwaZulu-Natal province are experiencing subpar performance, as noted by Zigalala. The problem of inadequate service delivery has emerged as a pressing concern that requires attention. The current study theorizes that there is a strong link between the challenges of non-compliance with stipulated SEM regulations and unethical behaviors with the issue of failed service delivery in these municipalities. The study considers this as its main problematic and hence assesses the ethical factors driving the standards in terms of SEM public procurement in some selected local municipalities in KZN. This is valid because considering for municipalities to be effectively improve performance and contribute to the socio-economic objectives of the municipalities, SEM practices must be linked to government laws and regulations and ethical behaviors governing SEM. In terms of methodology, the study adopts pragmatism as its ontological philosophical paradigm. As pragmatism leans towards solving practical problems in the real world to reach aims and objectives of the study. Further to that, the study adopts a mixed method. That means its data is collected in terms of qualitative and also quantitative to also achieve the objectives of the study. In terms of mixed method approach, it also agrees with pragmatism, philosophical stance, has also been adopted, realizing the aims of the objective and the objectives of the study. Sampling a total number of 138 questionnaires were distributed amongst the municipalities that participated in the study. In terms of quantitative method, then in terms of qualitative method, the interviews were also conducted from all the municipalities that participated in the study. 18 participants were then interviewed, which are the key informants and knowledgeable in terms of the phenomena that is being discussed. Then there is data analysis. As I've mentioned that I've employed a mixed method approach in terms of questionnaires and also semi-structured interviews. In terms of quantitative, NVivo was used. In terms of qualitative, there was in vivo, and in terms of quantitative, SPSS was then used in terms of the data analysis. Findings in terms of the study. These are the results from the quantitative side of the study, and they are presented. This section explores certain practices, values linked to the legislative prescripts, for example, the aspect of responsibility, accountability, fairness, trust, ethics. The data in this section hence provide responses towards understanding the availability of legislation and their effectiveness, towards enhancing ethical practices and values in SEM, public procurement practices, the degree of agreement and disagreement with several statements in section B of the questionnaire are tested, and the results are shown in the graph below. The graph is then presenting the results in terms of the question. More especially, my focus was on the one that speaks to ethics standard in terms of the municipalities. The results in terms of the quantitative data, also here we are reflecting in terms of feedback on the exploration of certain practices, values that are linked in terms of legislative prescripts. Here is a summary in terms of what then came up in terms of the data analysis. As I presented from the data above, statements sought to test values that enhance SEM public procurement practices at the selected municipalities. Among these, the theme of fairness scores the highest of 60%. That is followed by doing the right thing at 59%. The theme and aspect of feeling obligated to deliver on mandate scored the third highest of agreement of 58%. The theme of accountability also scored about 53%. The theme of responsibility was a bit low at 49%. Also high levels of agreement with statements alluding to the existing values that propel SEM practices, like aspects of responsibility, accountability, fairness, trust, ethics, and deliverability. This section further presents the data from the questionnaire, which tests certain statements that further sought to assess the SEM practices that propel SEM effectiveness in the selected local municipalities in KZN. The aspects and themes that guide the statements are further derived from the SEM legislation and guidelines. They are also grounded on the ethos found in different policies documents that govern municipalities in South Africa. The following table will also then show patterns in terms of the scoring. Here, I was looking at the statistical results on the assessment of ethical practices that propel SEM effectiveness in the KZN municipalities. This is a presentation of the same, and in terms of the analysis and the discussion in terms of the data, based on the data provided, it is evident that there exist substantial and statistical significant levels of neutrality within this particular sector. Nevertheless, it is important to acknowledge that there are significant degrees of consensus regarding the aforementioned proposition. The statement, the municipality aims at saving money and cost, received a high level of 47% in terms of agreement. That's followed by employees implement acts correctly and not legal issues at 44%. Statement, municipalities is attentive to citizens' needs and satisfactory service delivery, scored 42%. The statements that the time taken to respond to citizen and service delivery is minimal, only 23% agreed, and 44% they remain neutral in terms of that, with an average of 7% between disagree and strongly disagree. From the qualitative data, the issue of ethics and accountability, this was the primary theme that was examined. The components of ethics and accountability in the selected municipalities, and the following sub-theme were then derived, one being integrity and transparency. I have captured the responses from some of the participants in terms of the extracts highlights respondents' perspective on existing ethics protocol in the municipalities. In terms of accountability, also I have captured some of the responses from the participants. Discussions in terms of the factors that propel the standard practice in KZN municipalities. The findings from section B1, B3, B6, and B11 have revealed that there are indeed certain acknowledgement factors that propel standard practice in the selected organizations in KZN.
Hello, can you hear me?
Some of the factors that propel are notable
can you
based
hear
on the
me?
guidelines. Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's time. You are sitting on 21 minutes at this point. I'm just going to give you 2 extra minutes to conclude your presentation so that we can move on to the next person. Apologies for that.
I'm sorry, let me just shoot straight to recommendations. Recommendations, some of the issues alluded in this study that leads to unethical practices border on the lack of proper training of SM practitioners and personnel. Proper training can help in terms of addressing most of the issues identified in terms of the study. And also there is a need to devise means of equipping practitioners with the right knowledge and skills to deliver on their task. Most importantly, workshops should be put in place, sensitizing staff and municipal workers on the demands of ethical practices and on how to ensure ethical standards in the SM operations in KZN. Training on ethics and good SM practices also needs to be continuous and ongoing so that skills and knowledge on proper ethics will be constantly updated to meet future loopholes in SM operations at local government. In terms of monitoring and evaluation of ethics, the study has found that monitoring and evaluation mechanism in some of the selected municipalities are lacking and in most cases are not functional towards ensuring ethical practices and enhancing the performance of municipalities. The existing monitoring and evaluation offices need to be strengthened and empowered to carry out the task of continuously supervising and assessing SM practices and organizational performance to ensure proper ethics and accountability. Future direction, the study proposes that future research consider African ethical perspective to improving SCM at the local government level. This proposal is valid considering the need to adopt different ethical frameworks towards improving ethical practices at the municipal governance level. It is thus imperative to explore how values in African ethics can assist in improving SM practices and organizational performance at a local government level. In conclusion, the findings also noted established mechanism to show ethical SM practices are maintained in the selected municipalities. Notably, these practices are based on ethical values and the requirement of code of conduct in SCM in public organizations. The findings, both quantitative and qualitative data, provided the fact that these ethical practices do exist, indeed motivate the standard SM protocols and public procurement in the selected municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Kudu. Very, very interesting study. Quite interested specifically about ethics within municipalities and local governments. Very important for ensuring service delivery in South Africa. So a very interesting study. Please note any question you may have for Dudu. Dudu, please stay on the line so that we can ask some of those questions later on. All right, now I would like to find out if Peter is on the call.
Of course I am.
Great. All right, Peter, if you can, please project, and you have 20 minutes. We can see your notes. When you're ready, you can start.
Is it in the presentation mode?
Not yet. It's in your slide deck. You can go to the bottom or the top to put it on presentation mode.
There?
There you go. Yes, yes. Oh,
All right. Okay.
I'm not
Thank
sure
you
why it's
very
on
much.
projector mode, but that's fine. Carry on.
If you just go, sorry, Peter, if you go to display settings at the top right, on the top left, the right The top left, there's a little thing that says display. Yeah, that one.
Yes, yeah.
And you swap those around. So go to swap.
Is it working now?
Yeah, boy. There we go. Excellent.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you, everyone. I'm Peter Msinguza. I'm presenting from Melbourne, Victoria. So actually, it's so late in the night, coming to 3 a.m., but I'm here standing strong, and I'm going to present to you this work, which is a proposal kind of. So at the end of it all, I would need your critical eyes and maybe suggestions to make the study as interesting as possible. So I will present to you about the social enterprise critical literature review from African indigenous philosophies point of view. So the interest I have in the social and solidarity economy emanates from my PhD, which I did and finished in 2022. And it was quite interesting reading all the literature and trying to see how it is kind of becoming a buzzword, the social enterprise in the African context, but also the lack of contextualization of the concepts. But well, before going into the details, for many of you who do not know, the social and solidarity economy refers to various organizations, and it relates to organizing that prioritizes social and environmental objectives over profit. And of course, when you talk about the SSE, there are several organizational forms under it. But of recent, the social enterprise has been regarded as an archetypal kind of organization in the social and solidarity economy sector. And of course, social enterprises are taken as key to uplift the livelihoods of marginalized people globally. And of course, more so in Africa, where we have so much marginalization. And together with other organizations in the sector, the social enterprises are seen to be able to enable the realization of 6 of the 7 aspirations of African Union agenda, which is part of what this conference was about. Well, but although social enterprises have become like a hype of current or social entrepreneurship, we know that in Africa, for a very long time or time immemorial, there were organizations that were looking at the social and environmental dimensions of Africa traditionally. Well, they might not necessarily been called social enterprise. They have their indigenous African names or terms. Well, we have academic literature on social enterprises in Africa. And of course, the African social and solidarity economy is still emerging. And actually, the African Union is doing some good work on the social and solidarity economy in Africa. We have a bit of published papers on social enterprises in Africa, and they are in various outlets. And the issue is there have been kind of few attempts to systematically review and organize this research and make it more meaningful. And there is less focus critically on indigenous management worldviews. And what does this show? It creates definitely a knowledge gap that regards to whether or not we are sure that the existing studies consider these indigenous management and worldviews, and if they do, how do they do that? And if not, why? From my perspective, I think there is still a Western mindset and a Western hold on the social entrepreneurship studies. But of course, we know that entrepreneurship, which is part of social entrepreneurship, is influenced by context. And of course, this emerging research emphasizes the importance of context also in social entrepreneurship or social enterprises. For instance, the processes of social entrepreneurship or what social entrepreneurs do. For instance, how they respond to challenges, how they look for solutions. So the context shapes them, and they attempt to also shape the context. So if you don't look at it from an indigenous perspective or from a local context, you may not be able to capture what it means and what it can do. That is the concept of the social and solidarity economy or social enterprise or social entrepreneurship. But looking at the present, much of the research on social enterprise or social entrepreneurship, and also even the broader social and solidarity economy, the literature emanates from the global north, particularly Europe and the US, and even in Australia, where I am currently. And this implies that most of the studies apply Western theories, and we know what is problematic about Western theories or lenses. They are rooted in neoliberal capitalistic thinking. And when you look at Africa traditionally, we have our traditional worldviews, which have been leading our thinking prior to colonization, and even after the colonial people went away, although what they imparted in us still affects us, to use our local kind of worldviews to solve our problems. And so all this kind of worldview using the Western-centric view ignores the local variations, the indigenous perspectives and worldviews, and their influence and the value and the difference it brings. Thus, this research I'm kind of proposing will focus on the associated processes of social entrepreneurship or social enterprises and the broader social and solidarity economy sector from an indigenous African perspective or worldview. And the objective is to explore the extent and ways in which indigenous African worldviews and philosophies have been applied or not in social entrepreneurship or social enterprise and the broader social and solidarity economy organizations. And the methods I intend to use is kind of a hybrid approach that combines a systematic literature review and a critical analysis approach. And for the systematic review, it will assist or help me in the identification of studies. And I will follow what I have already done, a systematic literature review, and it has been published already in an A journal where I try to look at social and solidarity economic organizations globally, and I was focusing also on Africa. That will help me to generate keywords and such strings and follow a set of criteria for quality assurance. And for the critical approach, it will be vital looking from the lens of these indigenous worldviews, trying to analyze the context and application of indigenous philosophies and worldviews in the current studies in Africa. And I will try to follow one of the leading indigenous management scholars, Anna Maria and her husband's critical review approach, where they try to look at the issue from the critical lenses and what happens to that so that I can give some good conclusions. And what are the potential contributions? Of course, to the academia, advancement of the field leaning towards indigenous philosophies and worldviews and their contribution to contemporary business and management. Research is tending to the worldviews of indigenous people and how important they are to solving the problems in the world, because contemporary business is not. What if we look from the lenses of indigenous philosophies and worldviews and we see what they can teach us in improving management? And it's a way of kind of making unique contributions to management theory and practice. For instance, development of theoretical frameworks on contextualization of social enterprise or social entrepreneurship, or the broader social and solidarity economy from Africa, for instance. This could help to refine and advance the current theories applied And broadly, the study will try to imagine a way out of the status quo. The status quo, of course, we all know is the Western lens of studying everything, including, of course, social entrepreneurship and social enterprise. And from literature, we can see this has not been working for Africa. And if we continue looking from the lens of the Western-centric view, I think we will not go to the bottom of getting solutions to our problems. And the contribution from this study could contribute to practice too. For instance, having insights from the review to understand or guide the application of research findings to real-world circumstances. And this could improve the practice and resulting in, for instance, successful operationalization of these organizations, the social enterprises in Africa, and the broader social and solidarity economic sector on the African continent. In so doing, when we try to use these indigenous kind of unsettling the status view, the study will try to push this research. It will push off, of course, leaning to kind of trying to dismantle the colonial context and the centrality of Western views, push back on some of them, and then push forward this agenda for indigenous emancipation and using the indigenous worldviews to solve the local problems. Yeah, and lastly, this is kind of political. We have a conference, just like the one that you have, but we are focusing on indigenous enterprising or indigenous lenses. It will be in Melbourne. So the African perspectives and the African indigenous lenses are also welcome. So if you know any researchers, please, you're welcome. Tell them about Dylan Dua, and they'll be welcome next year at the University of Melbourne. Thank you. That's my short presentation.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you also for sharing information on your conference. It's incredibly interesting, and I'm sure just meeting Indigenous people and unpacking that knowledge is also quite valuable to listen to, even if you can't contribute. It's quite an important thing to learn about and engage with. So thank you very much, Peter, for that presentation. If you have any questions, please note them down right now so that we're able to ask Peter when we end our session, before we end our session, sorry. Okay, now we're moving on to the final presentation. This person was not on the program, but was recently added. Sandile, are you in the room?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Sandile. Please share your presentation. You have 20 minutes to present. Please let us know when you're ready.
Thank you so much. Yes, I am ready. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Sandy Chabalala, and I'm a scholar in African philanthropy at the WITS Center for African Philanthropy and Social Investment. I'm also a co-founder of a social enterprise called Huruma Bantu. In fact, our business very much resonates with what Peter has laid out around the solidarity economy, care economy, as well as impact economy. So that's very much the space that we exist in. Sorry, I may have to skip the first slide. So my presentation is mainly on children's rights and corporate philanthropy, and it's based on a project we did on the township economy, entrepreneurial ecosystem strengthening in SADC. And so in terms of the overview, I'll do the background, the aim, literature review, theoretical framework, methodology, as well as do a discussion and some recommendation. This is a paper in progress, but however, it's almost done in terms of finalization. So I'll really be grateful for some of the comments and feedback on it. So in terms of the feedback, the paper really looks at how we basically work with different entrepreneurs in the informal economy, especially in the context of townships, where we basically asked them why they started their businesses. And it was quite clear that most of them started their businesses because they wanted to ensure well-being and ensure sustainable security for their children. So many people have actually become entrepreneurs in the informal economy, primarily because they want to look after their children and ensure that their children are well fed, are well looked after through the income that they derive from their businesses. So that was really the core of why people started businesses in the informal economy. However, then we also link this to the AU Agenda 2063 and SDG look at how children, it's important for them to thrive, not only to survive, but to thrive as part of fulfilling their potential. So part of this reasoning that we got around why entrepreneurs start their businesses, we then aligned it to some of the international and continental instruments that exist to support the view that they have. So the aim of the study is really to understand why, like I said, why entrepreneurs start businesses, and as it's been mentioned, that they do it in order to provide support for the well-being of their children, but also understanding why the agency for income is for the benefit of children's rights in the entrepreneurial endeavor within the rural and informal economies across SADC. So generally, the aim of the study is to try see the intersection between entrepreneurial endeavor as well as children's rights in Africa. And so part of the literature review that we're looking at has to do a lot with Agenda 2063, where we've looked primarily at the fact that Africa's development will be driven by women, youth, and children, and by also linking this to the Lagos Plan of Action for Economic Development for Africa in 1980, which really began the work which led to AU having to create several instruments, such as the Africa's Agenda for Children 2040, as well as the incorporation of the security and safety of children's rights in the AU Agenda 2063, and obviously having to make an argument that this can only really be achieved through the deliberate empowerment of women who are entrepreneurs in the continent will immediately benefit children, especially women who are mothers. This will be very instrumental for them, as well as also linking some of this work to the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, as well as also looking at the UNICEF Children's and Business Principles, which does have limitations around looking at the informal economy. Rather, it focuses quite a lot on the established formal economy and how those economies, or at least those businesses, can influence children's rights where they operate. There's also quite a lot of scope in the African Charter on the rights and welfare of the child, where essentially says that children should grow in safe, nurturing and fulfilling environments. However, not much is said the fact that in order for this to be realized, not only states have to act, but also how is the agency of income going to influence this. And a big part of what we also do was also looking at, this paper would also be looking at the merits of the SADC protocol for children, which is essentially not necessarily well implemented, well spoken about, and also it has not been rectified by some of the members within the regional bloc. So this paper is crucial in the development of the SADC protocol for children. Obviously, in terms of the theoretical framework of this paper, we are looking at the fact that there is a strong intersection between children, business, and human rights principles in the continent. And this is really to show that not only the state, or at least not only business, is crucial in the advancement of children's rights, but also looking at the role that communities also can play in advancing children's rights within the context of human rights. And this is also very much seen within the discourse of entrepreneurship, which oftentimes, when people look at children's rights, they often focus a lot on child labor and don't see the fact that in order for children's rights to be enjoyed by children, there needs to be safer access to income by parents so that they can afford their children all the basic needs that they need, either at home or when they're at school. So there's quite a lot of intersection around business, human rights, as well as children. And so the part of the Africa that we want in 2063 is ensuring that the well-being and the best interest of the child is central in all aspects of development in the continent. And also the theoretical framework of this paper also alludes quite a lot to the recent United Nations Human Rights Council Resolution 31 of 7, where the Human Rights Council really centered children's rights and business, and how there is a link between how business operates, how entrepreneurs operate, and how all of this essentially has an immediate immediate impact on children. And so in terms of the methodology of this paper, I think we also look at a lot on, the paper tries to look a lot on the township business landscape, as well as situating the informal economy. And this is really much through looking at the assumptions that exist within these kinds of businesses. Because they're informal in nature, there has not been enough literature or enough understanding on not only the reason for their existence, but how they operate, how they're able to make profits, and how that profits can be used. And in our work, as well as in the research that we did across South Africa, Botswana, Mozambique, as well as Eswatini, we found that it has it's quite a lot of potential for the informal economy to thrive without necessarily the pressure of making these entrepreneurs to become formal. And so, looking at some of the philanthropic aspect of this work as well, we really question the idea of quality of life and well-being, and that's where we found out that people actually start businesses because they're really trying to survive, thrive, but in most instances that they've got dignity in their day-to-day lives, and through by making sure that they've got income. And so again, in terms of the entrepreneurial activity and the best interest of the child, and how this tackles poverty in the household is really such a crucial relationship that we found, is that most people are able to provide for their children by making sure they can attend school, they are being fed, and they feel safe in the township economies, because there is resources to ensure that this is realized. And some of the resources that we ask about what this means were as basic as being able to buy, clothes for the child, being able to buy toys for them to play, being able to pay some sort of extramural activities at school. All this money comes through the parents being able to be economically active by participating as entrepreneurs in the informal economy. So that's really the review, or how we situated the paper and how the discussion will essentially evolve. And in terms of some of the main discussions that this paper has, is really to call for the SADC protocol on children's rights, so that there's a deeper and alignment of children's rights to all the sustainable development and development goals, because all the goals that are there, all the 16 goals, have direct impact on children. It's not just goal 1, 2, and 3 that look at education, health, and safety, but all the goals actually have direct impact on children. So then it'll be crucial to ensure that SADC as a region actually does enforce this protocol on children's rights, and actually does a lot of reviews, but also reports quite extensively on the progress that's made as part of ensuring that the region is able to reach the African Agenda 2063. As well as part of this paper is also calling for businesses that are well established to look at supporting women entrepreneurial programs by ensuring that they give them skills, by making sure that they give them supply opportunities, so that through doing that, when the income comes into their lives, they're able to provide for their children, and there's dignity in their households. As well as also looking at the enterprise and supply development, which is a much more concrete and structured way that corporates operate, and also for them to look at how they can also start to prefer to support people that are parents in the communities, so that children can essentially benefit through this. And so the paper really also looks at access to capital, as well as funding for the informal economy, and really understanding that the informal economy cannot continue to be sidelined or marginalized in terms of how resources are being deployed within the entrepreneurial landscape. And a big part of this then falls within the idea that a lot of social and activist committees within companies need to look at how children's rights are being centered in their deployment of corporate social investments or corporate social responsibility initiatives. And through this will be a really great way for businesses to enforce ethics that essentially promote the upliftment of children through entrepreneurial activities of their parents. And so that's really the premise of this paper. And I think I'll end off there, because I think there's been quite a lot of time taken. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very, very much. You did have some time if you would like to conclude or say anything to close off?
Do you know how much time I have still?
Yeah, you have 9 minutes.
Okay, so basically, with that in the minute that I have, I may just look at some of the literature review and just to maybe explain a lot around how this regional effort, this continental effort, as well as global effort. However, we also need to look a lot around local efforts. So part of this paper, you know, when we advocate for the improvement of the entrepreneurial landscape, is looking at how we can achieve more localized ways in which there could be more community around entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs who do the work that they do because they want to ensure that their children are looked after, are fed, and so there's also dignity for them. So as well as also then what also we found in the literature is that there's often contradicting views around you know what it means to care for a child. And part of caring for a child is that you can't isolate the fact that there needs to be both parents involved. And that's why part of this paper is also looking at advocating for the idea that there is a link between entrepreneurship and the dignity of the household. You know, parents go to jobs, that's great, they find work, they're able to have income, but there's also parents that can never find work. And so they start businesses. And so there is a need to acknowledge those individuals that do that and to mainstream their efforts through all the legal and policy instruments that exist within the context of development in the continent. When Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini, introduced the African Union Agenda 2063, the Africa that we want, part of leaving no one behind was the fact that, women, youth, and children are very central to Africa's development. And I think the aspiration really there was ensuring that, linking this to jobs, education, and health. But there's also not a lot of emphasis given to the point that entrepreneurship is also a core part of that achievement. And so these people also try to basically, position entrepreneurship as a critical way for access to dignity, but for access to Africa's prosperity, as well as looking at the fact that if you are going to innovate industries in Africa, there is a need to look at new knowledge that drives startups. So how to business start up? What knowledge do communities or people have around what kind of businesses to start? Are they only starting businesses to survive, where they sell all the critical needs, or actually starting businesses that can have legacy, longevity, but also maximize profitability? And I think part of that is also to try and not overprivilege the idea that for a business to be seen as a business, it needs to be formal. There are many businesses in the SADC region that are informal and have been thriving for generations, or even thriving in their communities over many periods of time. So there is a need to acknowledge those efforts and to try integrate them into all the currently existing legal or at least international instruments that are there. So I think I will certainly then end my paper here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sandile. Incredibly interesting paper as well as study. Just wishing you the best of luck in that exploration. I would like to now open the floor to anyone who may have questions for the presenters. I'm just going to ask the presenters note down the questions so that you're able to respond. So if people would just lift their hands or raise their hand if they have any questions.
Very similar.
Sorry. Emma's iPhone, are you speaking?
This topic is really an interesting one.
Sorry, I'm just. Hello. Are you speaking
Within my
directly to me?
presentation, allow me to make some few comments here and there.
Hello, Emma's
We are
iPhone.
all
Could you
good
please
with
mute yourself?
artificial intelligence, which is AI that we all call it. Now, AI.
Can't you mute him from your side?
I cannot.
Understand
You cannot mute him from my side. Can I get some assistance, please, with muting the participants?
Appreciates the use of AI. I have my own reservations. So,
Hello? Paul, can I get some assistance with muting the participants?
In a way it also has its own effects on us. So
Sorry,
let's
I'm
go
just
straight
trying to get a hold of our
why
technical
we're here.
person so they can assist with this, but
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just a table of contents. We go to the next. So we look at the
apologies
abstract.
everyone, I'm just gonna
Now,
try
this
and
paper explores the ethical implications
if anyone is
artificial
in contact,
intelligence
I believe Dudu, this is your co-presenter. Could you please ask them to mute
the health
themselves?
sector, the education, the criminal
Okay, I'll do
justice,
that.
the employment, health sector. Now, the health sector, as we all know, some people will visit the doctor and the doctor will want to use AI to determine.
Thank you very much. Okay, apologies for that. Hope you can all hear me very clearly. Cool. I'm going to Bapiwe. You have a question, please go ahead.
Thanks. I have a question for Dudu Njogu.
Sure, please go ahead.
So Dudu, how do you foresee training address unethical behavior in local municipalities as you recommend?
Thank you very much. Any other questions, please? Okay, I'm going to give the speaker a chance. Could you please answer?
Oh, yes, thank you for the question. I think from where I am seated, remember I did indicate that I'm also a practitioner as well. Currently, yes, there is sort of ethics committees in some of the municipalities, and some they don't even have. There are code of conduct in some, and some they are just done for compliance purposes, so that if the auditors come in and check what was done, then they can then produce that. So what I am suggesting as part of the study is that, because during the interviews, you could hear from the participants that yes, they are aware, but there is a line that they need not to cross as practitioners or even as people who are in the local government. So what is happening is they did mention that yes, there is lack of training. They do hear about it, but no one has ever sat with them down and take them through what needs to happen. And as part of the recommendations, we are recommending that it be continuous, not something that will be done now because there are issues that have been picked up by community or by the auditors themselves. But if we provide continuous training to practitioners and they be aware, and not just practitioners alone, and also all the other employees within the municipality, so that even if you sign that code of conduct, you are aware what you are signing. And for me, continuous training will make someone to be aware, even if you were to take a decision that is not correct. But being trained, it will equip you to be able to resist, or to even to say that I am a practitioner, I cannot be involved in such and such. So continuous training for me, yes, it will definitely assist in terms of making people aware, run those awareness campaigns, workshops, training, whatever that can be done, so that we cannot be happy with the current state in terms of local government. Something needs to be done. At least this, I do believe that it will contribute in terms of making people be aware in terms of what is it when you talk about ethics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dudu. Peter, you have a question? Please go ahead, Peter.
I have quite a number of kind of observations and questions for most of the presenters. If I have
go
time,
ahead.
stop me if I take long. So one is for Emmanuel, talking about internet disparity between the global north and the global south. I realize it is a literature review, but I'm not sure if you're publishing this as a literature review or there is a study that's going to be conducted. But if it's a literature review, and you want to publish it in kind of a high-ranking journal or a good journal, not a predatory journal, I think you would consider making it, trying to have a systematic approach for the literature search so that you present it in your methodology so that there is traceability of the studies that you have focused on, and somebody can see how you approach the studies and then the emerging results from the studies. And also maybe the analysis, you could try to be more structured so that we can see where the themes are coming, the ones that you have presented. And I like your research where you have talked about digital colonialism. And I am in Australia. There is a lot of indigenous research that is emerging on indigenous data sovereignty, and in Canada and also in New Zealand. It would be good to really focus on that, because as we look at the internet and the disparities you're talking about, there is colonialism that is embedded in that. And if you hook onto that, I promise you would publish this work in a very high-ranking journal, because that's where the management research is going towards, kind of removing these kinds of disparities, but taking into consideration the local perspectives, and of course, trying to deal with this colonialism that has been following most of these interventions all the way. Yeah, yes, that's what I could say for Emmanuel. Then I have Bapiwe, just a very good presentation on leader and employee relationships. And your focus on national identity is interesting, but I was thinking, is it only national identity, the identities of the people who are there, or are you looking at also international people who come in, even from European countries or the Asian countries, or are you looking only at the African context? If it is the latter, then also trying to use an indigenous lens would be very important, because if you look at the lenses you're trying to use, the political influence lens and the social identity lens, if you could add into the third lens, the indigenous lens, I think that would give you more opportunities to provide context-specific solutions about this kind of leader-employee relationship issues. And I think South Africa is one of the best cases where an indigenous lens is really very important, and there is some literature that has been done much with the indigenous lens on several human resource management issues in South Africa. Yes, and maybe I could say you are concentrating on the qualitative method, on the quantitative methods, but a mixed method approach would be maybe important, because if you want to develop a very good, bigger conceptual framework, maybe qualitative themes, if you did a mixed method approach, could help you to advance or build a broad-based model of what you're studying. And lastly, if I'm not talking a lot, Dudu, you have talked about the ethics, and of course in your recommendations you have talked about the use of the African ethical perspectives. If you would like to publish this work in a high impact journal, maybe if there is a way, if you have already conducted the study, but you could compare and contrast, because you have used the Western lenses, which are really some of the issues that we are facing today. When we use the Western lenses to look for solutions from the African context, they have not been working. So if you could compare and contrast using an African philosophical perspective, such as the Ubuntu, would compare and contrast the solutions, and all those things you're putting forward to be done, could something unique come up if you look at this ethical kind of perspectives from an indigenous African ethical perspective? Yeah, I think that would be very important for you. And lastly, Sandile, on the African philosophy, I can see you have focused on the informal economy, but also for you all to focus on the indigenous lens and what it can offer could help you to provide the more localized ways of how entrepreneurship can contribute to dignity. And there is some research that has been done on that and has been published in high impact journals. Maybe if you could search like the JBV or all organization studies, they have done some good work on this. Okay, I don't want to talk anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. We really do appreciate feedback, and I think these conversations are for colleagues to also share their thoughts. So we do appreciate that. Unfortunately, Sandile had to step out because he does have another engagement. So I'm just going to give the other presenters an opportunity to respond or perhaps add to Peter's comments. Does anyone want to go first? Bapiwa, Dudu, Emmanuel, do you want to have any additions or conversations based on what Peter shared with you?
Yes.
Yes, please, Emmanuel, go ahead.
So I think it's right on point. I've taken note of his observations. I think we need to do some more work on the paper. The paper is still in progress. And I've also taken note on his emphasis on digital colonialism. We'll do some more work in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. We appreciate that. Papiwe and Dudu, do you want to have any additions?
So yeah, I appreciate the feedback today. It's giving me some ideas of how far the paper can go. For example, looking at nationalities, not just African nationals, broadening that to the broader world, and exploring mixed methods around issues of nationality and identity and origin, and the use of indigenous sort of knowledge systems, literature to enrich that the study. So I've taken note of that. But I have a question also for Peter, if I may, Chair.
You may.
So Peter, I noticed that your study is looking more around social enterprises, and you make a case for why it's necessary to do that, particularly through an indigenous lens, if you like. Would you also consider looking at enterprises in general, beyond just the social enterprises, as an area to explore?
All right. Thank you very much, Bapiwa. I'm just first going to ask if Dudu would like to respond, and then we will take it back to Peter to close as well. Dudu, would you like to respond?
Yes, no, I have noted the comments. He's right on point. I think he's just stealing from my next paper that I've already started in terms of coming up with a framework that will be based in Africa. I already have a name for it. I will maybe contact him so that maybe we can share. I can share the paper that I'm talking about. Then maybe he can give me some pointers there. But yeah, that's the direction that I am taking on my next paper. I can share the draft. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Exciting.
I think it's important to share. So this is the work that you continue to do. A lot of you did mention that your papers are developing. So if we are able to share that as they develop, that'd be really great. Peter, please respond and close us off.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. So the consideration of like the broader enterprises, yes, I will try to do that. So when you look at the social and solidarity economy, as I said, it is kind of a big tent for all enterprises, but particularly those that have the social objective, and they get some money, for instance, but they promote the social objectives and the environmental objectives. Those are kind of the focus. I won't focus on profit-oriented organizations because they are not part of the social and solidarity organizations. Although we have for-profit organizations that also are social enterprises. Those ones will be considered, of course, they will be classified under the social and solidarity economy tent. Yeah, thank you for the observation.
All right, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate all the speakers and the contributions everyone made. Very interesting work that you're doing, and I definitely think it is not only range, but speaks to very specific perspectives. That means that it has a place to be grounded and applied in their spaces quite well. So please, I wish you the best of luck with your papers, and I look forward to seeing the full drafts and how you finally conclude some of your recommendations and findings. In general, thank you to all the speakers. This is the last session for the day, so you do not need to return back to the auditorium or main room. You may exit and you will see you tomorrow for day 2. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to bed at 3
Great.
a.m.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.